Hey, there you are. You're at that famous dock.
Woo! Yeah, I am a little concerned now, though. There is a tree log that is probably this big around, and it goes from one side of my dock underneath it all the way to the other side, and I got no idea how to get this thing out of here.
Huh. All right. This is just what this podcast needs is some action.
Man, I tell you, it's just like the weather here in Arkansas is crazy. And I remember why they call it May. It may be 40 degrees. It may be 80. It may be sunshiny, or there may be a tornado. Like, it's crazy.
All right. Man, you're using all the good material already.
Oh, I thought you was recording.
Oh, we are actually. Okay. All right, people, we've already started. Hello, and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Greg is in Arkansas in May, and he had a big old rainstorm this morning, and we had to delay the podcast because he was having an emergency. He was almost underwater. Yep. And so what I did is I was already rolling. I was already recording. So I recorded my 200th episode. So it was just me, myself, and I. So I actually didn't even turn the recording off. I actually just did it all by myself on Zoom. So what was bringing us to this podcast? We got Greg Smith here, super famous, good friend of mine. And he does all the solar vets stuff at the NABCEP conferences. And just by the way, people, there's a payment where veterans can get free NABCEP associate classes from HeatSpring. It's a brand new thing. I'm just learning about it, but I just thought I would mention that. And so what brought this about is 2 days ago, Greg recorded a video, and it was right after the House of Representatives just passed something, and there's all these people crying all over the internet because it's not good for tax credits and all that stuff. And so maybe I thought what we could do is we are going to play that video, and it works just as fine with audio because I know most people out there are just listening, so you could just listen to it, but it's on Greg's YouTube channel, and we'll put links to all this kind of stuff. And so what I'm going to do right now for the people that are on my YouTube channel is I'm going to share my screen. Okay, here Greg is at his dock, and just before we started talking, he had a log rolling in under his dock, and so we might have some emergency here. I like having like a podcast. There might be like people floating down the river. You might have to pull somebody out. I mean, it's just like right after this big Mayday thing going on here. All right.
A dead possum is a possibility. I've seen those.
A dead possum. Well, at least not a person. All right. And so I'm going to push play.
Well, the big, beautiful bill passed, didn't it? Thought it would. I've seen some pretty bad stuff already on social media. Get what you deserve. That's what you get. Frankly, that's the wrong way to look at it, but it's going to be challenging. I ain't gonna lie, but this ain't the first time we've had trouble in our industry.
So Greg is fishing right now. That's what's happening.
You just remember I did a video not too long ago on NEM 3. Remember that? Oh my gosh. Solar's done for. Didn't happen. It was challenging. But the people that pivoted to solar plus storage, we're still doing all right. Before that, I made a video on 3741. Oh, it's going to be the end of MLPE. Say bye-bye to optimizers and micros. That didn't happen either. People that shifted their strategies are doing good.
Okay, he's getting ready to cast.
And that's what we're going to have to do here. Okay, this isn't a roadblock, right? It's just a little fork. That's all. The people, the installation companies that pivot to, oh, you sucker.
Almost got a fish.
Oh. He wants it. So the companies that will pivot and switch over to a cash instead of a lease PPA, those are the ones that are going to do just fine. That's what you have to do now. PPA leases, it's over. Right? Solar bros are shaking in their boots right now. I guarantee you. Go to cash only. Go to ownership. You need to train your customers like hell in 2025 before this goes into effect. And we'll be all right. We'll be all right. All is not lost. Just got to be patient. You know? Just like me trying to grab this trout this morning. They're hungry. Trout are opportunistic hunters. Even if they're full, if they see something go by, it's in their nature to grab it. They have to. They can't help it. And that's what we have to do. We have to shift to a different model. You have to get hungry, and you'll get them. But you won't be throwing those customers back like I do these trout. I'll tell you that. I'm hoping to catch one. See these guys on the boat down there? They've been catching them. This is my turn. That's how it's going to be. It's going to be your turn, but you're going to have to make it work. Now, I got a blog post. You know how much I hate sales and sales talk and all that. But, oh, I'm going to get you. But I have some strategies to make it work for the rest of 2025. I'll put the description or the link. It's on my blog, snarkysolarguy.com. Go read it. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. I promise. We'll make it. This isn't the worst thing that's happened in the solar coaster. I got you.
Got a fish.
Come here, you.
Reeling it in.
See, I just had to change the spot. Just had to change the spot where I was fishing. It's like y'all are going to have to change. You'll get them. Come here, buddy. Yeah, you come here.
There it is. Pulling in a trout.
Oh, look at you. You pretty. Pretty.
Nice looking lure there.
Oh, come on. All right, fine. As a fighter, you got to be a fighter.
Pulling the hook out.
There you go.
Back in the water. Threw it back.
Get bigger.
Get bigger.
Perfect end to a perfect video and a perfect message. Y'all take care.
Now, Greg, that was so awesome. A perfect end to a perfect video there.
That was just crazy. Other than editing this video early the other day, that's 6:30 in the morning right there. So, like, I'm still not even.
You could just see the mist on the water and everything. It was just, I love the way you ended. A perfect end to a perfect video. It was just like so perfect.
Must be all that good living, I guess.
Uh-huh. And just all those analogies between, like, you know, fishing and the solar industry, all that kind of stuff. That was perfect, man. How'd you do that?
That was just all that. And none of my videos are scripted. They're not rehearsed. I just drug all my stuff down here, made a video.
Didn't even know what you were going to say. Huh? Just like, man, you have the instinct.
Did not realize I sounded so much like a freaking hick, though.
Well, hey, aren't you a hick?
I am.
I mean, look at us. We're two guys wearing baseball hats right now.
I know. I know. But I appreciate you playing that.
Oh, I loved it, man. That was like my favorite video of all time. You know, and even without the video, if you're just doing the audio, I mean, it's still perfect. It's a perfect end to a perfect audio. And it just like, you know, going out there, and it's kind of optimistic. One of the things that I see too much in this industry is people are getting all pessimistic over just little humps on the solar coaster. And when things grow like they are in the solar industry, of course it's going to be volatile and it's going to have some ups and downs. and we just got to hang in there and zoom out, and it's just going to be, we're going up,
Yeah. Yeah. This, like I said, this isn't the first time we've had problems, right? And I don't know, everybody, I've seen videos come out and they're like, oh, we lose the ITC, so a solar and storage system that costs 40 grand, you're not going to get this much, in incentives back.
Mm.
And I don't know, man. It's like, well, maybe we shouldn't base our industry on incentives and rebates that are so delicate and could be gone at any given time, right? And I don't know, man, if you're dropping $40,000, let's say on a car, right? And the tax incentive you get, like you're going to buy a $40,000 car because you want that car, right? Or a 50 or a 60 or $80,000 car. If you want to get an EV, those things are 80 grand, unless you want a little cheap Barbie looking car. But if you want a nice Tesla, or my dream car is the Rivian, and you're going to pay it, right? If you want that car. So you need to shift the way that you sell to people, right? If you want solar and storage, you're going to have to do it out of love now instead of ROI. Now we're talking about people losing the ITC tax credit. A lot of stuff on social media where they're, if you got solar system at $3 a watt, and then you add an energy storage system for whatever dollar per kilowatt hour. I hate those two metrics, but you're missing out on this tax credit of like this much. It's like, well, if you're going to go buy a new car, you're going to buy that car whether or not they give you the, oh, wait, $5,000 off or whatever it is, right? Like, if you want that car, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, our industry has been so coddled with incentives and rebates that salespeople don't know how to sell if they don't have those. If they don't have a 3 to 5 year ROI, or they're not below some stupid dollar per watt metric, they don't know what to do, right? And NEM 3 was a perfect example of that. They left California in droves because they couldn't just go to a homeowner and say, oh, hey, 3 to 5 year ROI. Now it's a little longer. But they left a state where the electricity cost was 55 cents a kilowatt hour, and they went to Nevada where it's 13. Like, you got stupid, man. There's plenty of money made here. And it's happen. Whether this ITC goes away or not, I think it'll be a wake-up call for sure.
Yeah, I was just listening to, they call them solar bros. I think everybody kind of knows what that means. They're just like the door-to-door salespeople that are probably not all bad, but there's a lot of bad stuff going on there. And there's this one solar bro that has some kind of solar entrepreneur podcast. And he said he woke up in the morning, he was just going to leave the state and sell his house. And then he decided that there's a whole bunch of money to be made because he's going to hype up the end of the year because it doesn't expire until the 31st of December, and then make a whole bunch of money between now and then leave the state or something like that, And
he's going to leave. He's going to probably go out of business, and all those customers, all those homeowners are going to be shit out of luck because they won't have anybody to honor that warranty now. He's gone.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's even an installer. He's probably just generating leads or something like that. I'm not sure. I have no idea. I don't know. But maybe that, like, I always like to just look at the optimism. Everybody's being pessimistic enough. And it's like, yeah, sure, I wish we had the tax credit forever and all that kind of stuff. But if they're going to get rid of it and that guy's going to leave the state, maybe that's a good thing,
Yeah.
And there's not a whole bunch of money for people to be making a whole bunch of money knocking on doors, bragging about their Maseratis or whatever they're doing, Like, that's not a good thing. And then if you look at other countries and stuff too, how come their solar is so much less expensive than ours? I mean, there are tariffs and there's lots of different reasons for that. But maybe part of it is there's people that are out there selling it so they can like carve out a whole bunch for themselves. And if there's not enough money in it for people to do that kind of solar bro stuff, then maybe things will kind of even out over time and good things will happen. And another thing too is just like when you look at why they had rebates and tax credits and all that kind of stuff, is it was to prime the pump to get the industry going. Then as the industry gets going, it's going to go away someday. But I just wish they did it 1% at a time instead of all at once. It just makes it a rough ride, I'd rather have it be a smooth ride, but it's like, we're not going to go to the year 2100 and with a 30% ITC or something like that,
Holy smokes. Sorry.
Is your dock moving?
The log just rolled out from under my dock. Oh my gosh. Look at the size of this monster.
Oh, we got live action here. And there's a big log that just bumped Greg's dock that he's on over there in Arkansas. I don't see it though.
Yeah, you will. It was under them trees. When you zoom in the video, you'll see it.
I saw something bouncing there. Yeah.
Well, I hope it don't hit my neighbor's dock. It doesn't look like it. Hopefully it'll stay against the.
So you're hearing it first, not live on Shawn White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast, only delayed by whatever,
The dock was moving back and forth. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, at least you didn't lose your computer or whatever you're cameraing out of. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know, talking about incentives and rebates and code, it's not the sexiest conversation, but, you got to talk about it sometimes because it does affect and shape our industry in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of just like it. Just like people got to hang in there, be optimistic, and it's all going to work out,
Yeah. And it doesn't do any good to shake your fist in the air and point to the oil and gas people. Well, they get $500 billion of subsidies, and how come we don't get any? It's like, because they got billions to pour into advocacy groups.
Yeah.
We don't have that kind of money. Right? We had Bernadette Del Charlo that was just fighting tooth and nail for what little they would give us. Right. And so I don't know, man.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she is. Oh, well, they're messed up, so we can be messed up too, or they get something, so we should get it. I don't know, man. That's not really how the world works in a lot of ways.
Or yeah, maybe instead of giving us any, they should get rid of ours, but then they got to get rid of theirs too.
Either everybody gets it or nobody gets it.
Yeah, but it's also kind of hard to do because to even talk about what is an oil incentive, like you were in the military and everything, because a lot of what the military is doing is over places where there's oil,
Yeah, I don't know. I just think, oil and gas have established themselves over the last 120, 130 years of being a reliable and abundant energy source. I don't think they need incentives to keep themselves afloat anymore. But what do I know?
Yeah. And another thing too is just like optimism in general. You look at human history and you go back to like my great great grandfather, and half of their brothers and sisters don't even make it to like adulthood. And
oh, yeah.
And then you go up and there's, you look at how many people get killed and all that kind of stuff. What's the human lifespan? Where the sewage went, all that kind of stuff. And we kind of have it too easy compared to the way that it used to be. But then if you ask people, most people right now will say like, are times getting better or worse? And most everyone will say like, oh, it's getting worse. They always think like right now it's so bad, it's getting worse. But then you zoom out and it's like, whoa, everything is as good as it's ever been.
Yeah, I never liked that analogy. Oh, you're either a glass half full or a glass half empty person. I don't like that. I don't like things that divide us. I mean, the glass is refillable.
Look at what I have right now. I have a glass that's half something.
There you go. What you got there? Is that bourbon or iced tea?
Yeah, I'm not telling. I think if that was bourbon, I'll be on the floor by the time we're done, or you'd be talking to yourself.
Yeah, that's what I usually bring down here when I'm just hanging out. It's a little glass, keep it on that shelf right there. Try to sweet talk those trout in. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Yeah, when I set up earlier for the podcast, and then you had your emergency trying to save your house from flooding, I was all set up right in front of my barbecues. One of them was a green egg. I was just doing that just for you, seeing what you were going to say. I was going to wait till the podcast was halfway over and then like take off my artificial background and have you go like, what's going on there? Like have you get all excited about my barbecues.
I am excited, even though I can't see it. Like this is the weekend, but it's raining so much here. I mean, I moved here in February and I still haven't taken the cover off my smoker. Like, she's really missing me. I think she's getting mad at me. We'll see what happens in a couple of days.
Yeah. And what's the name of the river that you're on?
So this is the Little Red River.
The Little Red River. Doesn't look little to me.
Yeah. It's in Heber Springs, Arkansas, but a couple miles upstream is the Greer's Ferry Dam, which created the Greer's Ferry Lake. So the lake is probably 300 feet higher in elevation than the river. So it comes out the bottom really cold. It's like 45, 47 degrees year round. Like there ain't no way you're going to go swimming in here. but the trout love it.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if Burt Reynolds is going to come around the corner.
When the river's high like this, people aren't really doing much, right? They're
Uh-huh.
not fishing. It's just the fish are trying to get somewhere to hide until the water gets low and calm, and then you just
Mm,
reel them in.
pretty cool, yeah. I mean, it's not even a done deal yet, too. Like at the time of this recording, like, it's got to go to the Senate, and people kind of have an idea of what the Senate's going to do. And it's got to go to the president, and everybody thinks they know what he's going to do. And then he always surprises everybody all the time anyway, you know?
Yeah, we got plenty of stuff to worry about, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
most people are just trying to get by.
And you know what I was thinking too about like the tax credit incentive? It gives people also an incentive to inflate the price because if you're getting 30% of something, it should be better. And I know that some companies, what was it like Solar City, Tesla, or whatever it was back in the day, it's been a while, they got busted for inflating the price of the system because it was like a PPA or a lease or something like that. So they could just make whatever price they wanted and then make the person have whatever payment they want. They weren't really even buying the system. And they could say, like, this system's worth $10 million. And then they would get $3 million for a 3 kilowatt system just
Yeah.
because it was like based on 30%. So there would be better ways even of making incentives, but it's hard to say like which way that would be.
I mean, it breaks my heart to hear stories like that. And the worst one was, these predatory solar bros. A lady ended up spending like $80,000 for a 5 kilowatt system.
Uh,
And it didn't even have a battery in it. Like
wow.
that's ridiculous. It just
Yeah.
breaks my heart.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I don't know what to do about those guys. And I guess,
Well, I do.
yeah, getting rid of the tax credit might be the worst for them than just about anybody else in the industry.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But let's talk about something happy.
Woo! All right. So, I mean, the numbers are going up for solar in the world. It's just like it's going up like crazy. We're on this trajectory of exponential growth. Nobody ever thought we would be where we are at this time. And we're way beyond anybody's expectation of when you and I got involved in this industry. We're like way beyond they ever thought that we would get to. And we're still moving in that direction, you know?
Yeah. It's been a fun time. Like I came in this industry in 2008, and I can't believe it's been that long ago. I came in when I was with SMA.
And I met you then too. Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. So I think you and I have known each other 15 years or more.
Yeah, because when you were at SMA, you'd come into my class at Solar Universe, and that was probably 2008 or 9, something like that.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah,
Hmm.
that was so much fun. First time I'd ever been in a yurt.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I had you come up to Grid Alternatives, was doing an intern class at the Solar Living Institute, and then you came along, and that was super awesome. Thanks for coming up
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
that was nuts. But I remember back then, a module was what, $800 or something for a 180 watt
yeah,
module,
yeah. It's crazy.
right? So string sizing mattered. I mean, if you put
Huh?
one or two more modules per string, you could price yourself out, of
Mhm.
a job. And
Yeah.
now look, modules are commoditized. It's like, man, they're so cheap. Just fill your roof up. Who cares?
Yeah, I
Right.
don't understand how they're so inexpensive. Like, I'm building a solar training center and I got to buy like windows. And it's like they cost way more than solar modules. Like, we should just start making windows out of these module factories.
I've seen some pretty clever things, where people will make, they'll put four of them together and make like a conference table out of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool ways
Yeah.
to repurpose the old stuff.
Yeah, it does seem kind of insane because like a module is sort of like a window with solar cells. So why can't it be less expensive to take out the solar cells? But solar cells are so inexpensive. And yeah, back in the day, solar was like so expensive that the way you kind of looked at pricing a system was just like, how much does a PV cost? Things
Yeah.
like, I mean, the inverter and the PV too, like the inverter costs something, but everything else was just like, oh, balance of systems. That's nothing. Like I can remember for a system, there would be like $3 a watt rebates in California. And the system was like $10 million. And then it was getting approximately $10 million. So $3 a watt was $3 million out of the 10. And then there's a 30% tax credit, another $3 million. So there's $6 million. I think even just the permitting cost, they were doing like a percentage. And I think it was like they wanted $80,000 for the permit. And there's just so many things that we worried about then that we don't worry about now. It was sort of like we were just placing equipment on a roof.
Yeah.
Because this stuff was just so expensive. And now nobody would ever believe that. It was like, I read an article in PV Magazine recently. Somebody was complaining about the price of solar going back up to 12 cents a watt for modules. That would be like in a different country without tariffs or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. We've come a long way,
Uh-huh.
we've come a long way. And one thing that I've noticed though is the quality of installs has gone down since I got in.
Yeah, that probably has to do with because when the solar modules were so expensive, spending double on labor, being real careful was like not a big deal, and you
Yeah.
just did it to protect that system. And perhaps that, you hear about more glass cracking, the huge big modules, all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. It's so cringy to me
hmm.
when I see videos of people walking on the modules. Like that just showed inexperience and ignorance on their part. Like you should never do that. Never. But
Well, I don't want to take you on this boat in Berlin where the PV modules for the boat were also the dance floor, and they still worked. And so I'm sure they had lots of micro cracks. But as my friend Nick, he's was part owner of this community that owned this boat, and it was like they focused more on the subwoofer than they did on the motor for the boat, And apparently too, like Berlin has more like inland waterways than even Amsterdam, is what they were saying. But it just like, really connected. And there's just like lots of people with their party boats and their German techno music.
oh boy, yeah, East German techno. I
Uh-huh.
never made it to Berlin. All the
Uh,
times when I was at SMA and Sonnen, I never made it there.
uh,
Been to Frankfurt. Germany's an awesome place to go. Like I fell in love with Hefeweizen and beer, and I just became a schnitzel storage container everywhere I went. That's all I wanted. Good.
Yeah, I remember my first time in Europe, I went to Munich and I went to this place called the Hofbräuhaus. We had this book called Let's Go Europe. So like all the kids traveling Europe used the same book. So you'd see the same people over and over again at all these different towns. And so we went into this place called the Hofbräuhaus and had these like big old huge beers. And then I was having this meeting and I was meeting it was like the Clean Tech Business Club and they were having dinner across the street from the Hofbräuhaus. So I went in and had some flashbacks. It was kind of cool.
Very cool. Very cool. It's pretty neat. I never made it out for Oktoberfest, which probably a good thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So what are you up to recently?
Personally or professionally?
Oh, whatever you want to get into, buddy.
Well,
So I know like you got a battery book. Are you doing more books? Are you like doing a second edition, stuff like that?
I tell you, man, I'll just let the cat out of the bag here on this show
Mhm.
that I am working on an off-grid book.
All right. I probably could have guessed it.
Yeah, I know. I know. I mean, almost immediately after I launched the battery-powered home,
Hmm.
that there, well, when are you going to do an off-grid?
Hmm.
So it's probably about time. I'll put my big boy pants on and get really, it won't be, this war and peace thick book. I try to make them short and readable, easy to read, but we'll see. And I've got a lot of people that are lined up to help me with that people have, a lot of more off-grid experience than me. So that's kind of what's brewing, but, I work at TIGO
Yeah.
and I'm just like up to here in course curriculum and new product courses and
Hmm.
just crazy stuff.
So you heard it here first, folks. Greg Smith is working on an off-grid book, and so compare that to your current book, your current bestseller.
Yeah, Amazon bestseller. I beat out Uglies for like 2 weeks. I was so happy.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I thank
Uh-huh.
all you. Like I had nothing to do with that. That was
Uh,
just awesome. But that's a great question, Sean. The difference between the battery powered home and whatever I call this off grid book, it's more focused. My off grid stuff is more focused on customer expectation management because where I see a lot of pitfalls is in that area. The end user is not educated enough on how the systems operate, how they behave, what kind of maintenance they have to do. And I'm not talking about lead acid. I'm still not going to touch lead acid. I'll stick with lithium. But they still, you still got to baby them a little bit. So I'm going to dive deeper into that, right? Because I mean, you and I both know, it's probably, your viewers, there's just not a lot of differences between the hardware that's out there. Yeah, everybody's got PV terminals. Everybody's got a positive, negative battery terminal. They all have about the same inverter sizes, about the same battery capacity sizes. It's all on the front end, pre-sale expectation management, and then on the back end, the O&M for these systems. So that's what I'm going to focus on.
What do you think about when you're doing a book like that? How do you deal with there being all these different brands and not picking a favorite and that kind of stuff?
Another great question, because I was working for a different company. I was working for Sonnen when I was writing that book. I didn't want people to say, oh, of course he's showcasing Sonnen because he's working for them. So I put Tesla in there. I did Enphase. I did all these other guys because everybody's got their own thing to offer, right? Like, I don't think anybody has it all figured out. No one manufacturer has it figured out, right? So you have to look at the different ones and which feature that they offer appeals to you the most. And that's what you go to. But as I said earlier, they're all pretty much the same. So, if you see one PV terminal, you've seen them all. But what differentiates everybody, absolutely differentiates, is the software. And so there's no way I can cover everybody's app and software. But the good news is that they all have the same types of information. They just display it in different ways, and some go a little bit deeper. So it's not that hard.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult too with making curriculum and books and things like that has to do especially with batteries because it changes so fast.
Oh, yeah, you would know that. You're the expert at curriculum stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, you make a class, you make a book, and then the next day it's like, oh man, they just changed that one. They just came out with the Powerwall 3. What am I going to do,
Yeah. Luckily, it's just a few spec changes, right? Few data points that are different. Generally speaking, it doesn't affect the overall behavior of the system. So you can still get away with it. But I kind of think like our industry is developing so quickly, just like the computer industry, right? Like I bought my first computer back in 95. It was a 386 DX266 with 4 megabytes of RAM. Holy smokes, right? And then I kept putting it off because the prices would come down every 6 months. Right? And they would get faster. And you just have to jump in when you want to jump in and just not worry about, oh, what if I wait? Just go for it.
Cool. Yeah, it's like then you have like all these different codes and things like that. And one of the things that I've had trouble dealing with too is like the publishers. They like to take a lot of time. It's like you turn something in and then it's like 6 months later sometimes, and it's always a battle like trying to get them to speed up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for self-publishing. You can that ISBN number even if it's self-published.
Yeah. I have a self-published book too. And it's just like you can update it real easy and you can change it real easy. It's kind of cool. Yeah. I'm actually going to release another one with self-publishing coming up pretty soon. And it's going to be the PV Building and Fire Codes book.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be based on the 2024, ICC codes, and it'll have like the IRC and the IFC mostly. So, and then pretty soon they're going to come up with another version, the 2027, Yeah. Well, then I do actually have to relate it to the NEC. So it has stuff with the 2023 NEC in it because I got to like talk about how the rapid shutdown requirements are actually different from the NEC versus the IFC. Like if you comply with one, you might not be complying with the other. And so then 2026 NEC, that's right around the corner now. It's like going to come out, probably like October or something like that, September even.
It's tough for publishers and equipment manufacturers to keep up with everything. As usually states like Massachusetts is notorious for immediately adopting the next code cycle.
Yeah, like January 1st. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody got to be ready.
Yeah, we'll see that when it happens. Yep. So working for all these different companies that you've done throughout your career. So let's see, I knew you from everyone. SMA, Sonnen, TIGO, is that the big three for you? So how's that been? I guess it's kind of cool. Like, let's see, you know how to work with electronics. That's kind of your specialty, I guess. So even though you know about like PV modules and all that kind of stuff, you know about how all these electronics work. I guess you were actually working on submarines with electronics too, right? That's what your previous career was, or, underwater.
Yes, I was a submarine sonar tech.
Sonar tech. Yeah, cool.
I call them trons in my
Hmm.
book, electrons. And we just had to learn all about that. But I was also a certified master training specialist, which is an elite kind of group back then.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you can train a sailor to not destroy equipment or kill himself, then I think your curriculum is probably good for the rest of the industry that we're in. And
Hmm.
that's how I designed my curriculum.
Hmm. Cool, cool. So do you get into like the internal parts of an inverter? Most people don't know about that, and most people don't really care that I come into contact with because they're just like, I want to know how to install this thing. I want to know how it works. I want to know what goes into it, what comes out of it. And they don't, as far as like what kind of like diodes and capacitors are inside of it, it's like doesn't really matter. And then I'll get like somebody in one of my classes, and then they're going to be like, tell me about every little component inside of that inverter.
And it's like, okay, but it doesn't matter because in a lot of inverters now, you can't even see those, right? You have a wiring box area that might have a circuit board in it, but the capacitor bank and the relays and the transit, all that stuff is up in the upper part of the inverter, which if you take that cover off for a lot of manufacturers, you'll void the warranty. And so I know you got the eggheads like me that know about all that stuff, but it's like, dude, like a lot of companies are running lean and we don't have time to do solar one-on-one. Like,
Mhm.
here's how to install it. Here's the terminals. Here are the things that you need to be concerned with. And I don't know, man, go take a class or Google that, right? Like most manufacturer service lines don't have time for that.
Yeah, and another thing that's kind of interesting, like if you go looking in Article 706 Energy Storage Systems National Electrical Code, there's a lot of stuff in there that's like kind of came from lead acid batteries, and they're talking about like, what's the short circuit current, and we've got to put that on the label, and the arc flash hazard and all that kind of stuff. And then you have lithium ion batteries that are in there that you're not allowed to go open it and touch it, and they're all behind some kind of electronics that'll make the short circuit current pretty much about really close to what an operating current is. And so a lot of that stuff is just kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, I cover that in my book, and I'm not bagging on anybody. Like lead acid brought us to where we are today.
Yeah.
Like 90% of it's recyclable. It's great for third world countries that are developing and all these off grid places. Like it's great, but it's just we're past that. And so we
Hmm.
had like Fred Flintstone kind of thinking. Even back when we got in 2008, there were inspectors that were like, oh, what's the short circuit current rating of your inverter? It's like, well, why are you asking me that? Well, because it produces power just like a generator, just like a standby generator, and they have a short circuit current. It's like, oh, okay, so you don't understand the technology. You understand what a generator does, and you think we work like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And we still battle that.
Yeah, maybe you could help explain that for people that don't understand. Like why the short circuit current of a generator would be different from an inverter output
Yeah,
circuit.
so the short circuit on its own is a bad thing, right? And so if you had some kind of internal error and it was pulling current in, because a breaker, I don't know if very many people know this, a breaker, it passed and it's written on the label of the breaker, I think it passed 10,000 amps.
Yeah. They call it the KAICE, or thousands of amp interrupt
Yep,
capacity. Yeah.
exactly.
And that could be like a, relatively small breaker.
Yeah, yeah, 20 amps, right? And so, oh boy, there's two boats coming up the river. So if it gets loud, you just let me know.
Okay.
I know one of them. So, but the short circuit current of a generator, like that's how much it could pull in, right? And so
Mhm.
you start fires and stuff like that. And so an inverter doesn't do that, right? Just like a lot of the ways that it looks for the array are just not applicable, right? You see them going by.
Yeah.
So they'll go upriver, they'll cut the motor, and they'll just float down and fish.
Fish. All right, cool. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a safety rating that's just not applicable to PV inverters.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of old schoolers like us that are just They only look at a couple things, right? Like there are inspectors in this country who don't understand solar. They
Oh,
don't understand what they're looking at. And they just show up. If they even get out of their truck, they walk over and they're like, where's your ground? Where's the ground? I just need to see a green or a copper wire. Where is it? Right there. Okay, good. You pass. That's all they do.
yeah.
So there's a lot of education that needs to happen.
Yeah, and so just for the short circuit, so you have a grid tie inverter, and you say the AC wires, that's the inverter output circuit going towards the grid, and you cross those wires, the inverter turns off because it can't do anything without seeing the grid. And then the current from the utility, that's a dangerous one, and it comes in and then it'll make the breaker trip or something like that. And then for an off-grid inverter that works without the grid, you short that one out. And the inverter, like even if you put too big of a load on it, you got a 5 kilowatt inverter and you stick, 10 kilowatts on it, there will be a little bit of a surge that it could handle. But, you go over that surge current and it just says, oh, I can't supply that. I'm going to turn off. That's all it does. It's current limited. In fact, with an inverter output circuit for off grid, you don't even need an overcurrent protection device there because it's a current limited circuit. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
it's like kind of nice to have a breaker so you could turn it off,
Yeah. I mean, you probably should still have one.
but it's like never going to trip.
No, no, it's just for service and maintenance, right?
Yeah. So it's like the off switch,
Yeah.
you do need an off switch. But as far as like overcurrent protection and all that kind of stuff.
These things, they are more sophisticated than 98% of the stuff that's in your home. They're amazing. And it kills me when inspectors, oh, well, how do I know that it's going to shut off and create a microgrid and not send anything into the grid, right? For a battery inverter, right? And it's like, well, it's UL tested. Like, that's what it's supposed to do, right? Well, I want to see the documentation for that relay. I want you to prove to me that relay. It's like, dude, nobody's on for that shit anymore. Like, that's 2005 stuff. Like, we've moved on. Like, get with a program.
Yeah, and that inverter can only put out so much. A lot of people think like it's like the grid or something. They're like, oh, I short that thing out and there's going to income 10,000 amps or something. And it's just like,
if you could handle the wire management, you can connect a 20 kilowatt array to a 5,000 watt inverter and you're not going to hurt it. You can't hurt an inverter by too much power, right? You hurt an inverter by putting too much voltage per string for residential, that's 600, or by putting too much current and exceeding the rating of that terminal. But the inverter is smart. Like, it's just going to drop down on this IV curve. You're going to get to 5,000 watts real quick. If you got 20 kilowatts of PV. It's an extraordinary waste of PV, but you're not going to hurt the inverter.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Shawn White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Shawn White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Shawn White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSean, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. Yeah, I remember when the SMA guys came into my Solar Universe class, and this could have been you. I remember like asking them some questions, and one of them was like, what would happen if I think back then it was like 3 kilowatt inverters were the most popular ones because it just, everything was more expensive. I was like, what happens if I put a megawatt of PV on a 3 kilowatt inverter? And the answer was it would just put out 3 kilowatts all day. As long as you don't go over voltage, it would just clip the array. It would just put out as much as it could. It would be just like it's connected to a constant voltage source. And so they'd be like, okay, cool. Maybe even on a good moon night, you'd be, making electricity with that system. And so that was one of them. And one thing that I've kind of noticed too is like I've got my brother and his friends. They live in this place in Alaska. It's a rainforest. It's under a tree canopy. It would be the perfect place to have a ratio of like 5-to-1 PV to inverter, something like that. But they're all off grid. And this one guy, he has a maximum power point tracking Outback charge controller. And I was like, well, I think a good idea for this guy, because PV's gone down in price, is he just buys a bunch of PV for that. I was thinking like it should just clip it, right? Just like what we were talking about. And they were saying no. And I called up Outback just to make sure. And the person that answered the phone, who maybe they didn't know the right answer because it just doesn't seem right to me, they were saying like, no, it would break it.
I mean, when in doubt,
Follow
manufacturer said,
instructions. You got to follow instructions or you avoid the warranty and
because
all that.
exactly warranty, right? So
I think I'm going to go take a little small Midnight or Outback maximum power point tracking charge controller and go hook it up to a megawatt array, except the maximum voltage is 150 volts. So I'd have to have like some constant voltage source under 150 volts and see what happens. And I think it would just put out what it's rated for, so whatever the kilowatt rating was.
and I have found that with a couple of the companies I've worked for, like the engineers, they have their data, they have their specs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always challenge that because most of those engineers don't live in the real world. Like
Mm-hmm.
they do lab testing. Everything always works in a lab, right? And I always do a lot of theory to practice. And I wish I had the time and the money and the space to do it, but I would test all of that stuff out. And I'm sure there's people out there that have done it. And, if we had some scientific peer reviewed documentation out there, then maybe that would ease, some of the design constraints that a lot of people have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I just can't help but think in that situation with it is that with maximum power point tracking, what you do is instead of working at the maximum power point, you go up in voltage, and if you get high enough voltage, there's zero current. So it would just be you would just adjust it and make it so it's just the amount of power that you could put out. Like, why wouldn't it do that instead of like breaking it because it's hooked up to some, like unlimited supply? It just seems like it should work.
I mean, maybe they're not confident in their MPP tracker. Maybe they don't think it can drop up because most string inverters, as soon as they connect to the grid and start making power, they drop down to about 80% of whatever the open circuit voltage is. And that's where they start doing the tracking, right? So maybe they're like, no, 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 you can't oversize by that much because they're not confident in the ability of their MPPT to fall back fast enough before the voltage would damage it or the current.
Yeah. Unless it was just like bringing in a whole bunch of current, even if it was current for a short time, maybe it would be okay. But I don't know. It just seems like they would design something better than that.
Because you're going to limit the voltage on those strings to 150, so it doesn't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said earlier, inverter, they're current limiting sources. So
Yeah, it's just like, what if I stuck a bunch of car batteries together until I got it up to 100 volts, which would be in the range, and then under 150. So what are I going to say? Like, 8 12-volt batteries, hook it up, and that would represent like endless current. And is it going to break that maximum power point tracking charge controller, or is it just going to put out maximum?
yeah, because it doesn't start drawing current
Mm-hmm.
until it connects to the grid. Because if you have open circuit voltage, then you're at IST, which is zero
Mm-hmm.
if you're at open circuit. So I don't know. That sounds like a fun project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it. Woo!
I love that theory of practice, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to break something or try to.
Yeah, it's just that those things are a little bit expensive for me to want to do it, but I don't know, maybe I'll do it. Does anybody out there want to do this and let us know? So if you're out there and you have some kind of, something like an Outpack maximum power point tracking charge controller, try putting like 8 lead acid batteries in series on it, or just put a whole bunch of strings on it, like, way more power than the thing tells you can do, and see if it breaks. I don't think it'll break. And I don't think it'll blow up. I don't think it'll kill your family. I think it'll be okay. But I might be wrong.
Yeah, you let us know how that goes.
Yeah. Because I would just think that those things are better. And maybe it was just like sometimes too, when you call up, like I've noticed, like when you call up tech support, you get two different answers when you talk to two different people. So maybe I should have called back until I got the answer that I wanted.
Yeah, if mom says no, ask dad.
And then they would have a financial incentive to tell you, like, no, it can't do this, because then they could sell more charge controllers.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. So what's better, Greg? AC coupling or DC coupling? Which one sucks?
Ah, see, just It's a 2-word answer.
Uh-huh.
Talk about it in my book, right?
Uh-huh.
Depends.
It depends. Yep. I totally agree with you. Yep.
And I cover both of those in
Yeah.
a lot of detail.
Yeah, of course. And you can do both at once.
Yeah, just depends on what you're trying to do. Depends on your loads. Depends on what time of day you're using your loads. AC couple's not a bad thing. I
Mm-hmm.
remember going round and round with a guy about that. Of course, it was online, so they're going to act like a jerk because they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of those people out there. And then what about like all the future of electronics? Because like one of the things that I see is that there's such a need to coordinate everything to like all the stuff in your house, all the stuff with all the houses on your block, all the blocks with all the blocks in the city, and to just like super coordinate it, sort of like a virtual power plant, but even more refined than that. And I know there's people out there selling their span and their lumen panels and all the companies that are trying to duplicate something like that. But when is it going to really happen where it's just like you're going to just see it like being easy to install and do? It seems like we're early.
Yeah, well, as always, it depends on money.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, those span and lumen panels are freaking sweet. Like, I love those things, and that's a great way to manage your loads and the consumption. Oh, got another boat coming by. Oh, there's a dog on top of this one.
Yeah. And I think that your noise canceling stuff is making it not bad. So, yeah.
Oh, here, hang on.
Yeah.
Look at here.
Hey, it's Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer. Woo.
Yeah, sorry, just a family out enjoying the day.
Nice. Yeah.
But
So yes, span and lumen and like when
yeah,
is it going to be like cost effective and easy to set up? It just seems like there's so many different things as far as like software, it gets really complicated. And I think it also reiterates why we need more smart people in the industry because it's not going to just be like, oh, just bolt this rack together and stick it up there and do that 100 times over and over. But we're going to have to like be knowing what the dishwasher's doing, you know? And they'll be like, I kind of think what'll happen is they'll just be like different CTs all over the place, or not even a CT sometimes, just like the appliance talks to this and that, and everything's just going to be networked. And then you input everything into some app, and the cloud is paying attention to that, and it sees when you're driving home and what the clouds are going to do and what's the weather forecast. And it just coordinates everything, and it knows when to charge your car and, all that kind of stuff.
yes, I've got experience with that
Uh-huh.
because they have one of their products that integrates with home automation. So Crestron, Control 4. So that's already a reality, but there
Hmm.
are still limitations, right? And
Yeah.
so you're referring to you have like what we would call a connected home, like a smart home. That's I think that's a I don't know, too high status of a word for what most people have. Just because you have your lamp connected to an Alexa plug doesn't mean you have a smart home. Yeah, that's a connected home.
Mm.
And what you want is a true smart home. And that's going to take coordination between the manufacturers of the appliances, the lights, the solar, the storage, the smart panel. I think we are a long ways away from that because it's all proprietary, right? And how are you going to have, it's going to take a lot. That's all I'm going to say. And
Hmm.
I think people will understand where I'm coming from. It's going to take a lot of integration, a lot of coordination between different
Hmm.
companies to get to that point. Somebody will do it, right?
Hmm.
It's going to be somebody big like Tesla that's got that kind of money to throw around. But to have a true smart home that manages all that stuff, like something out of Cyberpunk, 2077 video
Hmm.
game, we're a long way from that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, like my daughter works in the controls division for a mechanical company in Arizona. So it's pretty much like an air conditioning company, but it's kind of like that. And when we went into the convention center a couple of days ago, she's like, "Oh, I work in there. I was just there." And we went and saw the Rolling Stones at some big arena. She's like, "Oh, I work in there. I was there." And they put these panels up, and it's sort of connected like we want our home to be, but it's like they got lots of money. It's like they're imagine what's the air conditioning bill for the arena where Mick Jagger sings and stuff like that. It's like in 2 seconds, it's more than your whole house for a year, probably something like that. But there's all kinds of interconnected things. And so it's like there's that potential out there, but it takes teams of people to organize it. And so then we have all kinds of artificial intelligence and electronics to where we're going to get to some point where it's going to happen at that on the house level. And I know that you could spend a lot of time and effort and kind of get there to a certain degree, but it's difficult enough just for the super solar nerd to do their own house versus is it going to be regular for just everybody to have it? You know, we got like energy management systems, power control systems, and they're talking about that. And it's just really cool. And we could do it on a certain level, like we could limit our export. We could limit the charging of our car if we turn more stuff on in the house. Like there's already some of that stuff happening. And so I'm sure that it's not going to just be like all at one time thing. It's going to happen gradually and more things are going to just start getting interconnected. But then somebody will be like building a brand new house and it's like, man, I really could do all the plug sockets and stuff like that. And so it's just exciting times. And I think that people that are new in the industry, getting into the industry, that would be a really good thing to focus on. I think there's going to be a ton of money in that kind of stuff. I live near kind of Silicon Valley. There's Silicon Valley neighbors all over the place where I live, and they know how to do coding and software. And if they knew how to do the solar stuff at the same time, they took my class, they read your book, then they would be able to do all this kind of stuff. And it's like we have apps where they can coordinate all these cars and it picks you up at this time and all that kind of stuff, and it deals with traffic. So it's out there. It just needs to be put together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I just think that's to have a fully integrated house like that, it's going to be a while. And we have some of the most brightest minds on this planet making apps, right? It just seems like kind of a waste, but it looks like they're kind of transitioning over to AI, and I don't know. It's an exciting time, and I'm not going to let it bother me that it's unknown.
Yeah, and it's like I think everything, a lot of times people like to go black and white, and everything to me is on a continuum. And so we're already there to a certain degree, and where we get in 10 years is going to make today unrecognizable for the people that are 5 years old right now. And then in 20 years, the people that are not born yet are going to be looking back at what we're doing now and just be like, what the heck is that? These old fogies with their rectangular cell phones and.
Yeah, I mean, look at, I didn't have my first phone till I was 31 years old, and it was a flip.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you got 3-year-olds running around with iPads.
Yeah.
So that's just how it is. So yeah, 10 years from now, a lot of this stuff is going to be unrecognizable to us, but then to the people in that time, man, that's just an awesome time to be in, right? Because it's just going to be so common for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said too, or it's like as the policies get worse for exporting solar, like, in California, where like you don't get paid that much for exporting and stuff like that. There's more to it to like get batteries, get electric vehicles, to coordinate your loads, to all that kind of stuff. There's a big financial incentive for that. And so getting the home smart or whatever you're going to call it like that is going to be more and more important. And eventually the house is just going to be like getting a little bit from the grid every once in a while. It's like, it's not going to be grid tied with battery backup. It's going to be batteries with grid backup.
Yeah. And that's basically, we'll get to the point where you're just kind of sipping off the grid as you need it.
One thing that I thought is really interesting is if you do the math, and you figure out like the average house with a 200 amp service is using 10,000 kilowatt hours per year. And if you divide that by the volts and the hours in a year, you get how many amps on average. And it's like 4 amps. It's like a regular house, my house, your house is probably using 4 amps on average. And so maybe we just need a 5 amp service instead of 200, and then there's also talk from some people about defecting from the grid. And so you got some books for that, or you're working on it.
Yeah, I cover that in my first book. I talk about defectors, and that's where expectation management comes in. I mean, they've got a show about it. People that go off grid, and after like 3 months are like, oh, dang, I did not think this through. I just thought I want to get out of here. I don't want to be connected to the grid. The utilities are only going to get more antagonistic as time goes by. And so even if we get to this utopia of we're only, sipping off the grid every once in a while to keep the batteries charged or whatever, they're still going to get theirs. There's okay, fine. You can be a grid defector or you can have all this smart home fancy stuff, but I'm still going to charge it $50 a month to stay connected to the grid. So they're going to get theirs one way or the other.
Yeah, and I was wondering too, like, should you need an interconnection agreement? Like, I could see why, like, if you're just connecting your grid tie inverter to the grid, and even though you're not exporting, you're kind of affecting the sine wave and, power factor or something to some degree. So, like, there's an argument for an interconnection agreement there. But what if you just had a battery charger and all you were doing with the grid is charging a battery? And so you're going from AC to DC and you're using that DC. And so it's like the grid is a backup and you just charge a battery. I don't think that you should ever be required to have an interconnection agreement for that because all you are is a battery charger.
Yeah, I understand that sentiment, but working with the service teams for the last 15 years with the three companies, there's a lot of, we'll just keep your show PG. There's a lot of people out there that don't know what they're doing. If you just say, yeah, you don't need an interconnection if you do this, they're going to start pulling out all kinds of Radio Shack stuff from their basement. I don't know if Radio Shack's even a related example. But I've just seen people do some really stupid things with the UL listed stuff we have. I can't imagine what they would do if we didn't have an interconnection that required some type of oversight for that.
Like if it was just impossible to backfeed the grid or even backfeed the grid even in your own house, it just seems to me like, you should be okay with doing that. But it also brings me to something that's kind of interesting. And you've probably heard of balcony solar. Well, it's a big thing in Germany right now.
Oh, you mean full balconies, like out on the,
Yeah, and so there's like, they're calling it balcony solar, even if it's not on their balcony. So it's like, they got some rule, they can get a couple of solar modules, they can plug it into the wall, and I think it's minimal or no paperwork, and it's just a couple of modules. And once in a while, maybe it'll backfeed something like that. But there's no way we could do that here because we have freedom for the utility, I mean.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because when I was at Sonnen, we talked to a company that made a product that would do just that. You plug it in, and that was the point of interconnection, was that plug.
Yeah.
And so anything downstream of that plug, it would not backfeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're out there. The tech is there.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because it's actually a big thing. So I was just at the Inner Solar, the Smarter E, whatever they call it. It's 100,000 people. It's bigger than any conference in the U.S. on, solar storage, electric vehicles, hydrogen, all that kind of stuff. And somebody yesterday was telling me it was even a little bit more than 100,000 people. So that's a lot of people. And they had a whole bunch of booths that were balcony solar. It was just like plug it in your own wall type of solar. And so this makes it so people that are renters can have solar. People that live in multi-story buildings can have solar, all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty inexpensive because there's not a big bureaucracy around it. And people could just do it themselves. But I did talk to some people that were friends of friends that actually were solar installers that switched and started their own balcony solar company, and they help people install the balcony solar systems. And I was like, well, what do you even do? Because most people just do it themselves, and it's like, oh, we just kind of like make the wires look neat, stuff like that. You got this thing plugged into the wall and they could clip it in right. And it, they're probably not making millions of dollars or anything like that, but they're working for themselves. They got their own company, and they're, maybe they can also help consult them on which system to get, all that kind of stuff. But I thought it was kind of cool that they had a balcony solar company, but also that just like anybody can do it. And there's a limit, you can't go get two of them. There's like a certain amount of modules. So that's, I think one of the problems is like, if we had that rule here, people would go get, and, I'm going to buy a new one every month.
Yeah, we always tries to find a way. Yeah.
But yeah, so balcony solar. I remember there was some company out there like 5 years ago or something like that, and they were trying to do it, and it was on a billboard coming down the highway by the San Francisco airport, some tech company, and it was like a solar module with a battery built into it that you could plug it in, that could feed the grid, that you could unplug it, you could take it camping. It was like super cool idea, But I was just like, oh, there's never going to be a way, according to the National Electrical Code, where you could just take your solar and backfeed the grid and plug it into the wall, because it doesn't have a dedicated branch circuit. You're sharing that with other
Yeah.
stuff.
And we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll work around somewhere, somehow in the future, they'll figure it out.
I got something that's kind of cool. I actually got 3 of them, mini splits, where you could plug a string of solar into it.
Yeah.
In fact, I haven't plugged the solar into it yet, but I need to do something to get the rapid shutdown working on it before I plug it in. So, do you ever know of anybody that sells something like that?
Yeah, I can probably hook you up with that.
Uh-huh. That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So let's see. You got to go do some more fishing.
Actually, I got yard work to do because, like I said, that rain just destroyed my yard. And every time the wind blows, more branches fall down. So I got to pick up sticks. I got to mow. Probably not today, but always something to do here at the river.
All right, cool, man. It looks like you live at a beautiful place and you have like a super awesome solar job that you get to live. How many steps are you from this river?
35.
35 steps from the river. That's probably like 25 big steps. So so you could just walk out, go cast your line out there. You could fish for 5 minutes at a time here and there, I guess.
Yeah.
You've got your own dock.
Yeah. I just got Wi-Fi down here, obviously. So I can work, throw a pole in
Uh-huh.
after working hours, I think.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I shouldn't be fishing during
Yeah, sure.
working hours, but we won't tell anybody.
You made a great video right there. And that was like, relating it to fishing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're living the life. And it just also goes to show you, too, how using your brain can get you to places. Like when I started working for HeatSpring, I got a call from Brian Hayden 11 years ago. And he was telling me about this HeatSpring thing. I was like, do you mean I could sail around the world on my boat and make a living? And he's like, yep, that's right. And I was like, sign me up. And then I've been too busy to go sail around the world on my boat. One of the things about boats is it's like, if you can afford a boat, you don't have time to go boating. Do you have a boat there? Oh, let's see. You're muted.
Yeah, I muted myself because we got somebody else coming by. But yeah, I got a little John boat right here. It needs a little bit of work, but yeah, I am blessed, man. Like this is where I've always wanted to be. So can't complain.
Good for you, man. Well, thanks, Greg. Any last words?
Man, I usually have something very profound or stupid to
Well, you
say.
got to be reeling in a fish, and then you're going to really have that profound word. So,
Yeah. Not
a
this
perfect
time.
end to a perfect video. Like everybody's got to watch your video. That was the most perfect thing I ever saw. I mean, it was just like you couldn't have timed it better. I mean, it would have been like a Hollywood movie studio or something. Like, couldn't have pulled that off. I was just like, man, that's not really happening, is it? He's like saying all these words, reeling in a fish, and it was perfect, man. That was a perfect video. Everybody's got to watch it.
I appreciate it. Always good talking to you, my friend.
All right, you too, Greg Smith. And thanks for listening to Shawn White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Go to solarsean.com and get yourself enrolled in some classes. And also go check out Greg Smith's book, The Battery Powered Home. And soon enough, he'll have a new book. I'm not sure. I don't going to put any deadlines on them, anything like that. And make sure to sign up for some classes. Woo! All right, editors. At the beginning, I think you could just like kind of leave it really casually, how we just started talking. And then I was like, oh, we're not recording yet. And I was like, oh, let's put it in there. Yeah, put all that in there. That was just keeping it real. In fact, put this in there. Keep it real. Woo!